This is Shu Hirata's Let's Talk Japanese Fight Sports with Charlie Jewett from sogokaku.com. Let's begin. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Charlie and everybody who's listening to us, Happy New Year. Omedetou gozaimasu. I know it's been real. It's been 12 days since the January 1st, but how was your December 31st?
It was terrible. I had COVID. And I
Oh, you
was
did?
laying with a fever in bed, listening to Rising results as it happened.
Oh, so you didn't really get to see the fighting live?
No, but thankfully I purchased the pay-per-view via Unext, so I was able to watch it the next day. So I was when I was in like mid-fever dream, so I was able to watch it, but it wasn't live, unfortunately.
All right. So let's talk about the. I guess we should talk about the Rizin Decade review. To start, what do you thought about those guys from breaking down in the photos? I guess this is like a first part of the show. They call it Bangaiki, which is a little off the territory. So they try to position those fights as not really exactly a Rising fights.
Right. I think the plan was, because this was the Decade show.
Okay.
I think Sasahara said the original plan was to do like a 24-hour long event.
Right. That
was broke down into several smaller events. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if this was part of that or if they put this together once kind of the Ryan Garcia fight fell apart.
I think Ryan Garcia fight fell apart, so they had to come up with something. And obviously, right? I mean, you see what's coming up next. So Team Hiramoto versus Team, Asakura made sense, right? So
it also made sense because they were going to announce the Ren versus Miku rematch. Right. So it made sense to have them be part of the New Year's show.
Sure.
Plus, I mean, this New Year's Eve show didn't sell out. When I was at the Fan Expo the day before, they were still selling tickets. They were selling tickets day of. So I think it was really lacking the big name value of like a Miku or a Ren. Mm-hmm. So I think they wanted to connect them to the show somehow. Yep. Even though they weren't fighting, by making this part of the event, they kind of attached Miku and Ren's names to the event, which I think they're probably hoping would help them sell tickets and gain attention for the event as a whole.
Yeah, because it's like 10th year anniversary New Year's Eve show. That's why they call this Decade. But I think in terms of ticket sales, they probably struggle the most, right?
I don't know. Yeah, they announced the attendance, and it wasn't that different from last year. But last year in Super Rising, the tickets sold out incredibly fast. Yes. And for there still to be tickets to sale the day of, I can't remember a Rising show where that happened for a New Year's Eve show.
Exactly. So, I mean, in Japan, they don't really announce how much are the comps, how many of them are sold, so we don't know. But yeah, I mean, once they lost the Ampo fight, I cannot name names. They had to deal with a big platform in the U.S. about this too. They were going to do a pay-per-view or live streaming on that part of the show. Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, we were told like Makoto Shinryu and all these guys would be fighting early to accommodate with American pay-per-view or the streaming time zone. But again, once Ryan Garcia pulled out, that's it. Yeah, I think that deal went sour. And I'm not even sure. Do you think are they going to still pursue Ryan Garcia? Maybe possibly this Tokyo Dome May show?
Well, I think they mentioned, or Ampo mentioned, somebody that the fight would happen in America next. But I have serious doubts if the fight ever happens, just because Ryan Garcia's suspension is almost up. And I feel like once the suspension's up, he's clearly going to make more money fighting in the U.S. in a big boxing match. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, I imagine money kind of rules with him. Plus, I mean, going on what you were saying, I actually ran into some media people at the event that were there. They weren't brought in by Rising, because people are always wondering how Rising makes money for these boxing events. Whoever Rising was co-promoting this event with sent a bunch of media over to cover it. Mm-hmm. And they also sent, from what I heard, that's the reason Sugar Sean O'Malley was there, is that he was supposed to be the guest commentator for the Ryan Garcia Ampo boxing fight. But that fell through, but they just continued to send him anyway.
Right.
But I don't think Ryan Garcia will be part of a show in Japan. I think he'll wait out his suspension, recover from his injury, and make big money in the U.S.
Right. And besides, I guess some of his management are opposed to so-called exhibition fights, right? I mean,
right.
Some excuse I read was like they didn't even know this was exhibition. But come on, they had to know when you're fighting a guy like Ampo. Well,
once the suspension's over, I mean, it's really a lose-lose situation for him. If he loses to Ampo, it damages his boxing reputation almost irreparably. And he's still a very high-level fighter that can make a bunch of money. So I don't know why they would take that risk.
Right. And even though, let's say, Rizin come up with 10 million or whatever that is, or 15, whatever, I think Ryo will be making way more money here, right? Fighting.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's not even comparison. So,
yeah.
So, any fights worth review on this part of the Rizin show?
Well, I mean, you have it up. A lot of people were talking about the Ampo Sina Kariman fight.
Yes, exactly.
Because of the what can we say? The almost pro wrestling-esque antics in the end, where Kariman was attacking the referee. Right. And going for illegal backhand blows and everything. So I think they did the best to make it exciting.
Right.
But yeah, it was fun. It was a cool little it seemed more like pro wrestling to me than an actual fight, though.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll be honest with you, I did not watch any of these fights in full. I had to kind of fast forward it, it just didn't worth it,
Well, I will say this fight was saved by that kind of weird last round.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, this was a 6-round fight. And the first 5 rounds were, I want to say, pretty boring. Because Kariman just wasn't quick enough to catch Ampo, and Ampo's not strong enough to hurt Kariman. So it's just, that's the way it was going until the weird stuff happened.
Yeah. So, and, obviously, some of the fighters that they brought in, like Patrick Usami or
Usami looked really good.
Yeah.
I will mention there's a Yudi, was there a guy named Yuda that fought, correct?
Hold on there. There you go.
He's only worth bringing up because his gloves sold for the second most in the event.
Yeah, that's amazing, right?
Right.
We'll
so
about this glove values later in the show.
Right, but I just want to say this guy apparently has a large supporter base. And not to be too negative, but I'll also say the one fight that kind of sticks out is Kota Miura's fight. Talk about just this event's kind of funny because Sakuraba's son comes in.
Right.
He beats Yachi, has this huge pro debut. Everyone's talking about it. But earlier on the card is Kota Miura, who had this very similar introduction to Rizin. He's the son of a famous soccer player.
Right.
He wins with a crazy soccer kick. He's the next big thing. And now we see him. He's on the bottom of a card. His career is essentially over. And it just goes to show how cruel the sport of MMA can be.
Right. And he actually did made a pretty good money. He went to where? Philippines, somewhere, and did the exhibition.
Vietnam and Thailand, right?
Thailand, yeah. So he's very popular there.
That's why my wife kept saying he feels more like an idol now than an actual fighter.
Yeah, exactly. So this part, a breaking down part, this is a half idol or a talent, so-called quote-unquote talent in the Japanese language, the entertainment world. It's a TV talent.
Right.
Guys who just kind of like to show off with his fighting skills. They believe they have, So
well, I think it's not a breaking down fighter, but a comparable fighter would be Yushi.
Yeah.
The host who's the bad fighter, But I mean, that was a bad knockout. Kota Miura got knocked out really bad in that fight.
I didn't.
And that was wild.
I heard about it. Yeah, he's pretty bad. Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I'm not going to deny breaking down. They may produce somebody good, 1 out of a million, who knows, right? But for now, they really haven't produced any legit fighters.
They have not, but there is an interesting one later on the card that wasn't part of this, who comes in breaking down that we can talk about.
Right.
But it seems to be creating more, as we've said, kind of this idol culture.
Yes.
Right.
Right. So, I mean, let's get into the actual Rizin. Yeah. Now, do you want to go from the top or from the bottom? Because I think we should talk about the Sakuraba-san, right?
Yeah, let's just hop around.
Yeah, okay. So what do you thought about Sakuraba's son? I thought the fight was too short. Don't really tell how good he is. You know,
I would argue it was. I would argue it might. I would argue that you could make the argument that it's a quick stoppage, but it's one of those fights that's
now though, yeah, on that punch, yeah.
You don't want to call any knockout a fluke, but this just feels like a thing where the fight was so short. It was a situation that no one could plan for, so it's just kind of a thing that happened.
Exactly.
And
so
it's hard to rank him at all based off of that performance.
Right, right. And I feel kind of bad for Yachi because he's better than what was shown on that actual fight. You know, I know this is not a good comparison, but I feel like I was watching BJ Penn versus Carl Uno first fight. You know how like Carl Uno got caught and got killed in like 5 seconds?
But Carl Uno also did that really stupid flying kick thing.
Right, right. But in the rematch, they went all the way to the 5th round. You know what I mean? So, so it's hard to tell the actual ability of a fighter from that kind of a fight. It's too short.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Sakuraba's son took no damage. He was never challenged. Never. It was like a 20-second fight that essentially was a knockout off the first strike landed. Mm-hmm. So while it's a really good, exciting pro debut, it tells us nothing about him as a fighter. So it'll be interesting to see what he does in his next fight.
Yeah, exactly. So do you think they should do the rematch? Because I would consider if I was Sakakibara. And after all, Yachi is sort of popular. He's living with one of the popular actresses in Japan. It's still a little marketable.
See, I don't know. See, I almost think that you rolled the dice and you saw that you tested whether Sakuraba could beat someone. Because let's be honest, this is like a crazy pro debut for somebody.
Yes, right.
And he won the fight. So I'd almost now give him someone more his level just because he's got the win over Yachi. Yachi's clearly best years are behind him. Let's try to build up and nurture Sakuraba now.
That's a good idea. I agree with you because if you put rematch, Yachi will probably might even beat him, right? I mean, he's a veteran, so why not? When the Sakuraba had a great debut, you know, let's ride on that momentum and give him like a suitable opponent, right, to build his career. You know, but it is though rising featherweight. It's a pretty tough division now.
Right.
Yeah.
But Rising kind of has several ways that they handle prospects, and they don't need to give this guy like the Ersan Yamamoto approach. They need to build him up. He's very young, and he's got a lot of potential.
Right.
Off a debut like this, why would you ruin that? I would build him up slowly.
Yeah. Okay, I agree. Yeah. Although, you know, I could see them try to do rematch because I'm pretty sure Yachi wants it, but it doesn't mean Sakuraba will give it to him, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, next,
here we go.
This one, Taka Kenshin versus King and Polo.
So this is the one I kind of refer to as Ed Polo King does come from breaking down.
Yes.
But this is also one of those fights, kind of like the Sakuraba one. Well, it's different, but it's kind of, we don't know anything about Ed Polo King as a fighter because Taka Kenshin isn't really a good heavyweight. Let's be honest.
Well, but some of the fans in Rizin thought that he was the big one on heavyweight. Might even make it to the UFC and blah, 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 but probably not, right?
Absolutely not. I mean, I saw Ed Polo King at the Fan Expo. He is a giant. He is an absolutely huge person. And if he can fight like a tall fighter, like if he can learn to fight as a tall fighter and use his reach as an advantage and his kicks, I could see him beating Sidario. Sure. Exactly, right. Becoming the new face of maybe the promotion in Rizin. But he also said something similar. He said, don't rush him. He wants to like develop as a fighter and go up the ranks slowly. So it'll be interesting to see what he does.
It's interesting, but he's a character, right? And it's like in Japanese MMA always have this concept of sort of like a pro wrestling too. So I think he fits to that profile, you know?
Well, he also speaks Japanese, which is going to be a huge leg up for him.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
In the promotion, yeah.
I mean, if they do it right, he could be like a next Bob Sapp there.
Oh, absolutely. Because he's so big. He's so big that you could put him on like reality shows or like those panel shows.
Right.
They used to have Bob Sapp go on, who doesn't speak Japanese, and he would just eat like 50 plates of sushi or do all this crazy stuff.
Raw meat, whatever that is, right? They do.
Yeah, so they could totally do that with Ed Polo King.
Oh yeah, I could totally picture that. So he's going to be a very interesting prospect, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
The next fight I really want to kind of touch is this one, not just because he's my client, but this is one of the, I think, fights in the Rizin on New Year's Eve, but it was considered to be a so-called world level matchup. Yeah. And a lot of people don't really talk about it, but Shinyu gave up 2 kilograms on this fight. Instead of doing the regular 125, we had to give up because Torres was a so-called like last-minute booking, and he had to go to. He was in I forgot, Mexico somewhere, and he had to go somewhere for the visas and stuff like that, and we weren't sure he was going to make it, and he didn't have enough time to cut weight. So, we're not complaining because we agreed to it, but then at the end, I guess. Torres is a much better wrestler than Makoto thought.
Well, I think this fight's a good time to bring up. I was really curious about the scoring of how these things are being done.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go over to the JMOC Twitter, they released all of their scoring for the event.
Yeah.
And as my suspicions have always been, and as we've learned, now they start announcing the results, generalship is clearly the most important of the 3 scoring because there's damage, aggression, and generalship. Generalship is so many fights on this card and in Rising in general are decided only on generalship. They don't give any points for damage, no points for aggression, just generalship points, which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, but I actually think it should be the damage because this is called damage to win.
They almost never award the damage points.
Yeah, and
you have to almost essentially kill the opponent to get those damage points awarded.
Right. So Shinyu, when he had a last fight against Ogikubo, then they all thought that the decision was kind of shaky, and they went through this lecture with the JMOC and all kinds of stuff. And I basically told these Makoto and his cornerman, hey, listen, this is the fight. This is the fight. You score the fight in whole, not as a round.
Right.
So obviously you got to win the last round. So you're gonna have to forget this mentality of I think I won the first 2 rounds, so maybe we can cruise kind of thing, because this is never gonna happen in Rising.
Well, that's what when I was watching this fight, I always got the impression that I felt like Shinyu could have been doing more. I don't know if that's a bad opinion, but I feel like he didn't have the urgency that like Torres looked like he had to try to do something.
Yeah, you know what? But here's what it is, though. After the Ogikubo fight, I think I told you that we went to Rising office together and spoke with Sakuraba and Shingo and everybody, and we told him he has to be the killer. He has to look for the finish, and if he keeps doing that, then even though he loses the fight, then he will have a better results in terms of like a reaction from the fans or how Sakuraba sees the fight. So. In terms of a fight, I think they like this fight better than the fight against Ogikubo.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But still, I think, like in last round, he went for that leg submission. So the point is he really was willing to take a chance, risk, and try to go for the finish. But that ended up giving his back. So again, on generalship, he, was behind. And Makoto told me, I talked to him right after that fight, and he called me, and he said, Torres is better than I thought in terms of wrestling. The little technique, like where to put his hips when he was on back, all kinds of stuff. It was kind of hard to get out. So, if he knew that Torres's wrestling skills that level, he would have taken a different approach. But again, it's already done. Yeah.
It was a split decision, very close fight. Right. It was essentially decided only on generalship. I don't think any other aggression wasn't awarded to either fighter.
No,
which means that they thought it was kind of even, and damage wasn't awarded to either fighder. So
and
he's very close. He's so close, especially with he keeps getting right up to the line of winning these big fights. So I feel like he's going to be due to him soon.
So I'll reveal this now, that the one thing I did on negotiations for this fight is that there's a rumor that it might be a Flyweight Grand Prix this year. So since he had to give up 2 kilograms for this fight, I made sure that even though he loses, he will get into the Flyweight Grand Prix.
It's almost, is it more than a rumor? Because I think I was listening to Sakuraba's comments. I know that there's been rumors of the Flyweight Grand Prix for years now, but he mentioned when talking about Horiguchi about a summer Flyweight Grand Prix. So I think it's almost more than a rumor now that Sakuraba is talking about it.
Oh yeah, I think it's going to happen because obviously they signed a bunch of new flyweights last year, right?
Well,
so
look at this card itself. There's a bunch of flyweights on it.
Right. So, and I'm telling you right now, if I were Rizin, and I'm sure they are, because Sakuraba is the type of person who just try to do something more ambitious, they will be talking to Brave right now, try to get Mokaev in there. Because that's going to create more noise within the flyweight in the world stage, right? I mean,
absolutely.
You could definitely argue like, hey, our flyweights may be better than the UFC's flyweight stuff,
Well, plus I got the thing that now that Horiguchi isn't tied down with a Bellator contract, and they have free access to Horiguchi, I think they're absolutely going to want to use Horiguchi's name recognition.
Right, but do you think you want to put him in the Grand Prix or wait till the Grand Prix champion? Then you can challenge Horiguchi.
I think they want to put him in the Grand Prix.
So too, right?
I think they know that Horiguchi is just itching to go to the UFC. And so they want to put him in the Grand Prix to create buzz for the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And either he wins, which is really good for Rizin, or he loses to someone and it becomes like a symbolic passing of the torch. And that person can become a new star in Rizin. So I think it's win-win for Rizin no matter what happens to him.
Sure. Now, I know Horiguchi is itching to go back to UFC, but I'm hearing the UFC is not so interested in him.
Well, it was interesting because after the event, Sakakibara said, yeah, Horiguchi won, but based off that performance, I don't think Dana White or Hunter are going to be clamoring to get him into the UFC. And also, I think it's important to realize Sakakibara wants Horiguchi in this Flyweight Grand Prix.
Right.
So it's not like he's going to bend over backwards to help him get into the UFC.
But again, Horiguchi has his own management, so the management will be talking to UFC. But I think that the problem is that his age and also the fact he lost to Sergio. They prefer picking up Sergio back.
Well, I think he has several factors weighing against him.
Yeah.
One, they already have two flyweights. They have three Japanese flyweights in the UFC now. What aren't Kai Asakura? They have Rei Tsuraya and they have Taira, who are all flyweights.
Right, and they're doing the road to UFC again, so who knows, right? Another flyweight. So
plus, Horiguchi is only 33 or 34, but fight mileage wise, I think he's clearly not getting better. I'm not going to say he's getting worse, but he's not getting better.
Right.
I also think that the UFC and Horiguchi's relationship kind of ended on a negative note where the UFC said he doesn't move the needle, we're not interested, and then he left for Rizin. So I think Horiguchi's got a lot going against him, and his performance against Zulu, he got stunned once and dropped once against a guy that the UFC's probably never even heard of. So I think they don't care that he won. I think they look at that fight and they say, this guy takes a lot of damage.
Yes. I totally agree. And also, we'll talk about this later, but you have to understand that Asakura, Kai, who fought in 125, who was 135 champion, and virtually really didn't much and got dominated. Right. So the matchmakers who always have excuses like, hey, you're a rising bantamweight, couldn't do anything against our flyweight champ. So to go back to Flyweight Grand Prix, I really hope that Rizin will be talking to Brave and bring on Mokaev. And knowing those from the Pride era as a matchmaking culture, they might even bang Mokaev against Horiguchi on the first round.
Well, that'd be great because
just like what they did to Gomi against.
They need to do that because
with
some of these older fighters, they can't make the Strikeforce and Bellator mistake of trying to make those fights happen in the semifinals. They need to make them happen in the beginning.
Right.
That way we know that they're going to happen.
Right. If you book Mokaev and he's going to be fighting Horiguchi on the first round, plus that might create pretty good buzz outside Japan too.
I know he recently signed with Paradigm. But you got to get Shaddy in there too. I mean, I know his contract's over. It's a 3-fight contract, right?
I think so. Right. Yeah.
But you got to get him in there. That guy, he has it reminds me of when Naoki first came into the UFC. He had this Mike Tyson-esque monster under the bed aura about him.
Yes.
And Shaddy totally has that right now.
Yeah.
And you got to throw him in there and all the monsters you have.
Right. And face it, in this world of fight sports right now, where is the money coming from? What part of the country? Right. You need to start, right? Yeah. Obviously. And I'm pretty sure Sakakibara is talking to somebody on that part of the world, try to get the money. And quite frankly, I mean, I think besides the UFC, in terms of MMA promotion, per show wise, which one makes a solid profit every show? I mean, who knows? Rising may be the number 2, right? I mean,
oh, absolutely. Now that Bellator, I mean, PFL seems to be struggling at the moment, and they just announced that they're like reducing their tournament prizes and everything. And one championship seems to either pay a very select few fighters very well, and the rest get nothing. So I feel like Rising is almost by default probably the second organization.
Yeah, and as PFL is already cutting down their prize money to half from this year,
right?
Instead of $1 million, it's $500,000. Sure, still it's good money, but it's
not a good look. No, it's not a good look.
Yeah, because you're cutting down in half immediately. Yeah. So and in terms of one you just mentioned, we could talk about one championship because they're doing Japan show, right? So just because they have so many kickboxing fights now, so I don't think it's a good place for a fighter to go.
It was funny because I made a list of certain promotions. I put all of I looked at every event of the year.
Right.
The number of kickboxing fights that one championship puts on versus MMA fights is like staggeringly different. It is clearly a kickboxing promotion now.
Right. And what's really bothers me is this. Even though they're in that situation, which means clearly the number of MMA fights are decreasing, right?
Oh, they're dropping
drastically. They have to revise the MMA fighters' contract. I mean, how can you promise certain number of fights within this period, right? When you're cutting down the number of fights dramatically.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense.
Just do the simple math with the number of fighters on the roster. So I think that's the kind of sincerity that one has to start really presenting,
Right.
I mean, if they're going to advertise about being honorable and all kinds of stuff, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But anyway, to go back to Rizin Decade, and I want to touch on a couple more fights, which is the Yaman fights, and also this Kubo versus Shadov. I mean, like I said, the featherweights in Rizin is pretty tough.
Well, this was a flyweight fight, wasn't it?
Yeah, this was a flyweight, but I'm talking about the other one. Sorry, the Kubo fight.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Which one?
This one. Kubo.
That's also a flyweight.
Kubo is actually isn't it featherweight right here?
It's 66, right? Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Featherweight is featherweight. You're right. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I mean, when I saw this fight, they could have stopped this fight way early.
Well, this fight made no sense because Shadilov is coming off of an incredibly impressive win over Archuleta.
Right, and they even do like a little videos of how hard it is to find the opponent, right?
And then they give him Kubo, which just seems crazy. Well, especially if this is the last fight on his contract. This doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Well, here's what it is. Kubo is the one who said he wants to fight. He started talking about that on his own YouTube and stuff like that immediately right after the Archuleta fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I guess Rizin, you want to do it, so just gave to him.
Be careful what you ask for, because he got absolutely murdered.
Right, and they're having a major difficulty finding an opponent for this fighter, right? So now, let me ask you this: once this contract is over, do you think he will stay or just go straight to UFC?
Well, he signed with Paradigm, right?
Yeah, I think so.
The same management company as Conor McGregor, which to me means he has his eyes on the big stage.
Right.
Now, I know he called out Kleber Koike after this, but I think his contract's up, supposedly, and he clearly is in his prime, and he's 24 years old. I think he's going to go whoever pays him the most money.
Right, then it's got to be UFC then. So is this the one guy that we don't have to consider in the rising featherweight division anymore? Because I hope
not. I hope not, because this guy's a monster.
I
know I mistakenly said I want to see him in the flyweight tournament. I was making a mistake. This guy's featherweight, but he's an absolute monster. I mean, it's kind of funny. This fight was on the same card as Koike and Chihito, and the impression of everyone I spoke to was they think this guy would kill either one of them. Yeah,
exactly. So, I mean, is this sort of like, did he put him into the next contender?
Well, I know that I saw some article was mentioning they wanted to see him or like Dopbeck have a title contender fight because Kleber Koike is mentioning he wants to fight Vugar for the title defense. And that makes no sense to me because Vugar went up in weight, lost to Souza. He's coming off of a loss. You can't give him a title shot. This guy is a monster. clearly this guy, I don't want to like be too hyperbolic, but I'm getting like weird Fedor vibes. Like he could become like the strong foreigner from like Russia who rules the division in Japan.
I totally agree on that. That's right. So I think he's be the right for in terms of being next contender, obviously, right? I mean, but is it Clever is going to take it? Is the point, you know?
It's so weird that Clever said he wanted to fight Vugar because I'm like, dude, Vugar's coming off a loss to your teammate. Nobody wants to see that.
Right. And he's not even in the featherweight like a road to title fight, right? You know,
right.
Yeah, and
this
also,
is the fight I want to see.
Right, exactly. So he should be fighting Clever, Koike, yeah. I think. I don't know if it's going to happen. And even this one, all right? I mean, this is also, Yaman did better than I thought, but this guy, Dautabek, is actually a pretty good fighter also.
Well, people are saying they want to see him fight Shadi for the title eliminator, but he looks very good, but I still think Shadi's earned it. Now, Dautabek is a great addition to the division. I know he lost to Miku a couple of years ago. But as Andrew said, I think he's completely changed his game. He's a different fighter. It's not the same guy from back then.
Exactly. So, I mean, if he fights Miku right now, do you think he'll, come on, it's going to be a very different result.
It's a very different fight. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think these two are pretty much up for the title next, right? I mean,
absolutely.
But I think it depends on the contract.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm telling this right now. I mean, even Mikuru or Ren or the Sakuraba kid we talked about, they're all in featherweight. I mean, this is a tough division. I mean, to become a rising featherweight champion, it's really not an easy task at all.
Well, it's going to be tough. Plus, I mean, it's kind of interesting because Koike is the champion. But I've always thought, I've said this before, I think Koike is kind of stuck in Satoshi's shadow.
Mm-hmm.
Where because he's so similar to Satoshi, but he's not as charismatic as him, right. I don't think his popularity's ever really taken off.
No.
And he's not like a beloved fighter in Japan. Like diehard fans know who he is. I mean, Chihiro Suzuki was way more popular, in my opinion, than Koike is.
Sure. Right.
So I think Shahid has the opportunity to become kind of a scary foreigner. He's already getting a lot of attention because people can tell how good he is. So I think he'll be that fighter that doesnent need charisma, because he has that scary aura.
Right. He will just dominate.
Yeah, that's exactly. It'll almost be like kind of similar to like the way Hamasaki Ayako was, where like she didn't need to say anything. She's just destroying everybody. That's who this is.
Now, this is when I kind of wonder about that. Like, let's say if you go and talk to UFC, even though you can get contract like 100K to show, 100K to win, whatever, sometimes maybe it makes sense to stick with the Rising for maybe a couple more years and get that title and try to get bigger contract, especially after everybody saw how much Asakura got paid.
Well, right? I think there is a legitimate strategy to kind of taking the Satoshi approach, where it's I could go and test myself against the best in the world, or I could just become king of this promotion that still pays really well. Get a bunch of support, become a popular fighter, and then once I'm more marketable and have more bargaining power, then go to the UFC.
Exactly.
And then try to get a sweet deal. I mean, Asakura got an immediate title shot.
This Not guy only that, he got paid 1.6, whatever that is. It's way more than probably like any new signee, right? In UFC history, except a guy like Brock Lesnar.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I mean that means if he can become a big name in Japan, has that kind of followers, on top of that in his own home country, on top of that, if you have like a reputation like a Fade or a Prime, where like people think, oh man, this guy may be the best in the world. I mean, then UFC might even offer him way more than what we just mentioned, right? I mean,
so we have a comment from someone asking if we think a fighter from Azerbaijan has potential to become a major pay-per-view, a ticket seller in Rizin. I think Shahid's from Kyrgyzstan.
Yeah, something like that, right?
But I think if he becomes like a Fedor person,
I don't have a ticket selling power. I mean, Japan. You understand? Japan is the country who's from a long time ago good at accepting other people's culture, right? They're very good at accepting stars from other country. So it's not like they're only looking for a Japanese star.
Well, I mean,
Fedor, Krokop.
I'll use this to segue a little bit. I didn't think this would go. Sugar Sean O'Malley was received very well by the Japanese audience.
Right.
He was the reason people went to the Fan Expo. People were excited to see him. They're going crazy. And Shahid has this crazy like aura to him right now, where he's scary, and he is going to get, if he keeps winning the way he wins, he will be a very big star.
Oh, I think so too. He would be like a Fedor, like you said, in the Parade era. So,
And back then, the Japanese fighter manages to beat him, that'll skyrocket that Japanese fighter to crazy levels as well.
I remember back then when that UFC really wanted a Fedor, they offered him like 6 fights, $30 million deal, something like that, right off the bat. Right now, UFC can in a position to offer better deals than that. So I don't know. I mean, he's still young, and even though he wait another 2 years, he'll be about 26 or 27 going to UFC. He may be a perfect timing, right?
Right. Plus, I mean, you mentioned Azerbaijan, where Rizin went. If this guy becomes a big star, that could open up the option for the Rizin to do like a Kyrgyzstan show or something.
Right. Exactly. So it kind of makes sense for Rizin to even offer him pretty good deal too, right?
Right. Exactly.
Because he could be the dominant force.
Oh, he's looked like a monster. I mean, the Kubo fight's one thing. It's the Archuleta fight that really showed me who this guy was.
Oh, of course, right. Yeah. Now, let's talk about this one.
Yes. Another fight decided off of generalship.
Right, but I think Motoya showed that he is a veteran, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He was a step ahead of him on almost every aspect of that game, right? I mean,
Motoya has always been, like, if you want to look at like the definition of an all-rounder, Motoya can do well in any area of a fight. He's got that veteran mindset where he can take the younger fighters to, when he figures out where they're uncomfortable, he can take them to that part of the fight and force them to fight there.
Right. So, I mean, obviously, I can tell you this, that he was supposed to fight Naoki for title on December 31st. But Naoki, because of the injury he has sustained before the Kim fight, still, it kind of got worse, and it wasn't healing well. So we said no. And that's why the Rizin came up with this matchmaking, you know? And, you know, when I was announced, you know, I know Akimoto is up and coming, good looking, southpaw, you know, he's
good. 18 years old.
I just still thought the Motoya is still a far better, and that's what it happened. Now, I guess, Motoya fought Naoki once a couple of years ago, and he got dominated, so Motoya is different now still. But let's see how he does against Naoki, right? I mean,
well, I don't know how much better he's gotten. I just think he's always been kind of the same level. But I will say this fight should be interesting. It's Motoya and Naoki are both. They had that joke when they first fought that they both have like no charisma.
Right. They both just know how to talk.
They both don't know how to talk. So it'll be really interesting to see how they promote this fight.
You know, like a week before the fight, maybe they should do a talking battle.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be so awkward. Now, I will say Naoki's grown a lot, and he talks a lot more than he used to.
Sure.
But it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, because Naoki dominated him so badly in the first fight. It'll be really interesting to see what happens this time and what Motoya's learned.
I mean, dominant in last fight too. I mean, even though the injury, you know, I think Naoki's hitting the peak now. You know, he's got 2 fights left on the contract. I can do this right now, so we'll see. You know,
But to get some, I mean, speaking of people raising their stock and going back to the UFC, maybe
you know, for Rizin, Naoki's a little not going to say difficult, but it's not like Horiguchi or Ren or Miku. You know, like
marketing wise,
the Naoki is in the card. It doesn't mean they'll sell 4,000 tickets immediately, kind of stuff.
Right,
you know?
right.
But Naoki is a pretty high paid fighter now because he's a champion.
Well, yeah, now their fight it's not going to be in Tokyo. It's like what, Kagawa or something? Kagawa,
yeah, they built a new arena, and they're So I mean, it's good that they're going to a different part of the Japan, and you know, maybe it's just going to be the main event. Who knows, right? You know, so
I think it'll be the main event.
Right. So it's a good spot for Naoki. Then fighting, within a bunch of people, right? Okay. So, do we need to talk about Izawa or?
Nope, we don't.
Because she's going to be fighting Reina.
The fight was a waste of everybody's time.
Right. And I think she'll be fighting Reina next. That's what I'm hearing.
Hopefully, but she makes it sound like she doesn't want to have that fight.
Yeah, but in rising women's division, it's nothing really developing. They're not really signing anybody new.
It's the only fight to make.
Right. Then what the hell she's going to do after that?
Well, I was saying that they should just have sign Murata Kaneko and have Seiko fight her. If Seiko thinks she can fight people on the world level, what better than a former ex-Invicta champion UFC fighter?
Right. And if she beats Kanako, that's a good campaign if she wants to go to UFC, right?
Absolutely. That's what I was saying the next opponent should be.
But again, that's one. So it's not like developing a division, you know?
No, absolutely. That's a one-off. That's
Yeah.
absolutely because Seika, it's just Seika seems kind of on the fence of whether she wants to go to the UFC or not. She keeps saying like, "Well, I hope they make an atomweight division," which, in my opinion, they're not going to make an atomweight division anytime soon.
Right, anytime soon. No.
So if she really wants to go, she'll have to move up in weight. So that's why I would suggest.
But she's making very good money in Japan and getting popularity, feeling good. So it's like a Satoshi route, right?
Right, except she's not popular.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Rizin is not really developing a division.
Right. That's probably if they featured her more in more impactful fights, her popularity would be soaring.
So yeah, I know Kanako makes sense, and I think Mizuki has one fight left on the UFC contract. So let's see what she does next. And if she
well, I was also saying I know GFL is like scooping up all these fighters, but I was also saying like if you could like snatch up someone like a Jessica Penne and bring her over, or someone who is an atom weight from the old Invicta days.
Now, GFL is something I don't know if I should talk about it, but of course I'm in communication with them. But it's really hard to recommend that to a fighter at this point, especially a Japanese fighter. When
it's really weird because what they're signing, I'm having a hard time understanding it. So they've signed a bunch of fighters, but all that means is those fighters are draft eligible, and only certain fighters will get drafted by like 6 cities. Some of the signings don't make a lot of sense.
You become a free agent. Yeah. And you can go and fight for another promotion kind of thing. But
because I know former Rising fighter Claire Lopez is part of it. So
right. She signed it. I saw her Twitter, but even she said that I think they will announce who is going to be in the first season. If it's not, you became free agent or something like that. Right?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was explained to me as well.
Well, I hope anything they do, I hope they will be successful. But it's still. Future is very it's hard, to predict what's going on, and
I hope they go well. I always think having more MMA promotions is better than less MMA promotions, and my question is that this idea has been tried before with an organization that had lots of funding, and it did not go well. So I'm just kind of interested to see what they do different to make it succeed.
Oh, exactly right. So.
Because IFL tried really hard.
Yes, they did. And they did have very good fighters, and they had interesting teams and coaches and stuff like that.
They had legends as coaches, and they burned through a fortune. So it'll be interesting to see what GFL does different.
Antonio Inoki.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they tried, but it didn't work, right? I mean, it's right. So we'll see. But for now, I have to tell these guys that in GFL that they want to create the team in Japan, but that means you need to have 5, 10, whatever
it's more than that. It's like 14 fighters or something. It's like a crazy number.
It's very difficult to convince or even recommend GFL to any of the Japanese fighters at this point. I mean, they have a Rizin to look for, they have a UFC to shoot for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They have Rizin, they have the UFC. Plus, they have local promotions that they can use to build up their records to go to those promotions.
Sure, and some could shoot for PFL, right? That kind of stuff. So, yeah. So I we'll see. Hopefully they will be successful, but I still have to sit and see what's going to happen.
Yeah, they're announcing a bunch of stuff at the end of the month. So I'm kind of interested to see what those announcements are.
Exactly right. If they're going to come through, right?
Exactly.
So this one, Satoshi versus Kerimov.
Kerimov didn't want to wait because Chihiro Suzuki is like the most booked fighter of all time. And so he moved up in a weight division to fight Souza, which in hindsight was not a good decision.
Nope.
And because I think Kerimov's biggest strength is kind of like his actual strength, his physicality.
Exactly.
He lost all of that against Souza.
Right. And, in terms of so-called grappling BJJ skills, there's a far.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in terms of their skill level. So, but I guess Kerimov wanted to fight in New Year's Eve and earn money, right? I mean,
I can't blame him. I mean, Koike and Chihiro are just booked. I mean, there was a point in time earlier this year where I felt like Chihiro had 5 fights planned that hadn't happened yet.
Right.
Because they wanted him to fight Pacquiao, they wanted him to fight Koike, they wanted him to fight Yaman, all these people.
And the fact that he just lost, it's kind of shaky in terms of him. Should he fight for Clever next, right? Because it really doesn't make sense at that point, you know?
He needs to, I honestly believe if you're going a title shot, you need to be coming off a win.
Yeah, of course. You have to. It only makes sense, right? Now, the main event. Or not the main event. Horiguchi versus
We
Zulu.
talked about it a little bit. Horiguchi won, but I was more impressed with Zulu's performance. I mean, he stunned him. He dropped him. He even took Horiguchi down. And Horiguchi's wrestling is very underrated.
Right.
So I was very impressed with Zulu, and I would love to see him back in Rizin.
They will bring him back, of course, for Flyweight Grand Prix.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, right?
He has a cool ring entrance. They can market him. He's an exciting fighter, and he brought it to Horiguchi. What more could you ask for?
Now, let me talk about this real quick. They had the big news is that his fight-worn gloves of this fight was sold for 520,000 yen, which is like about $3,700.
Right.
And they were like making big news about this. Now, I'm going to tell you this right now.
It's not that much.
That's like the fine art business. The better the art you deal behind the door, it's really stupid to put it on an auction like this. And just to let you know, I know a collector who bought what's his name? Magomedov's gloves from non-title fight. I'm talking about non-title fight when he was young, for like I think it was $60,000. You know?
Yeah.
And
well, I want to put some context on this because his fight went for like 520,000 yen, which is a decent chunk of change. Let's not forget that Ren's went for 7 million, and Mikuru's went for 21 million.
Yeah, exactly. So
I mean, these gloves, that's like a pretty normal number for like a main eventer on these auction sites.
Right.
Whereas if you're a big star, it's going for way more.
Yeah, exactly. Or at least you set up a starting price much higher, so you have like a value there. You know, it's like a baseball balls, right? From the show.
Well, it's like the Otani ball. They start the auction at like several million.
Right.
What cracked me up is you see that Kate Lotus's gloves went for 1.2 million.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So that's good. That I think this auction company is bringing up a new business model, right, to the MMA, right, in terms of selling gloves. But
well, it's kind of an interesting. I'll ask you about it then. I have a question. In the past, those gloves, as you well know, and some of our listeners may know, were almost immediately confiscated from the fighters after the event, and then they were given to big roller sponsors.
In Japanese promotion, it's still do. Most fighters, they don't get to keep the gloves, so those sales of glove goes to the promotion.
And the promotion, Rizin used to just give them to like the big sponsors.
Right. And
now it seems
we can take it home. So that's a fighter's property.
Why do you think they're switching to the auction system now instead of giving it to the sponsors?
I have no idea because it's not like they're generating big income.
Yeah, if they're making $3,000 off Horiguchi's gloves, I think you could get more money on return of investment by giving that to a sponsor and making the sponsor happy.
Or just deal with the big fighters behind the door. Like what do in any art galleries.
You gotta find, what was that guy's name? Rising Daisuke, whatever that guy's name was.
Right. He was the guy who faked the sickness.
Sell him the gloves. That guy was throwing money around. Sell him the gloves.
But again, you know, okay, maybe Horiguchi is not a Conor level or not a Muhammad Ali level, of course, right, in the world stage. But still, a little over $3,000. I mean, a little less than $4,000. You know, I'll tell you this: there are a lot of fighters who prefer not sell fight-worn gloves, just like Dan Henderson or even Korean Zombie. I approach those guys. They keep everything. Now, Dan Henderson wants to keep it for son, right? They want to show his family. Makes sense. Korean Zombie is smart. He wanted to give this fight-worn glove to the doctors or therapists who help him out or sponsors. That's way more valuable than $3,000, $4,000.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Plus, some of the prices I see, like Izawa's gloves went for $225,000. My first thought immediately, I have no evidence for this, was she bought her own gloves. Like,
I mean, that's why in a way this auction is so-called devaluing fighters, their fight gloves.
No, if I was those fighters, I'd buy my gloves and then say you need the money or you want to give it to a sponsor or something in the future. You're gonna get way more return on your investment.
Exactly.
that.
Right. Yeah. So I always tell my client, don't put it on auction. Or if you do, put the minimum bidding high, right? Especially
Is this why all of your fighters in the UFC like give the UFC like their T-shirt to sell or whatever?
yeah.
Doesn't the UFC take one item to sell at the auction or
We
something?
never give gloves. Never.
Yeah, give them a T-shirt.
T-shirts.
They're
Take a t-shirt.
worthless.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I'll tell you this. This is one thing I regret to this day. Remember when Mizugaki fought Torres for the WC title fight?
Yes.
That glove would be valuable, right? It's so funny that
I won't say names, but I know of a Japanese glove collector who has an amazing collection.
Yes.
And that guy, I mean, I know he bought Nate Diaz's gloves from the first Conor McGregor fight.
Mm-hmm.
This guy was throwing serious money around to get these gloves.
Over $2-3 million over 20 years.
So I'm like, the idea that Horiguchi is in for $5,000, I'm like, I mean, $3,000. This guy was throwing way more than that.
Way more. And I actually do have a list of gloves he purchases. It's pretty impressive.
No, I've
done deal with him many, many times. So
he's shown me his collection. It is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. He even have a condo just to store the gloves in Tokyo. So, no, the point is this. So there are specific collectors out there who can pay way more, but they would not go into the auction and start bidding. They would not do that.
Well, so, I also liked it because Rizin used to do, for those who don't know Japanese culture, New Year's Day, a lot of places will have like what they call like a lucky bag.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a bag where you spend money. You don't know what's in the bag, but it's usually really good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Rizin used to do it too, where you go to the Rizin shop in Roppongi, and the first 20 people could buy the Rizin lucky bag for like $500, and they would put like signed gloves.
Yeah.
And the excitement that would create to me is worth more than the money that they're making off of it.
But anyways, just to finish the last conversation about Mizugaki's WEC gloves against Torres, of course we were supposed to keep it and stuff, but when I was dealing with the media and everything else, some corner man from some Brazilian team came and talked to Mizugaki, which doesn't speak a word of English, and he was saying like, I respect you so much, can I have these gloves? And Mizugaki's like, yeah. So he took the gloves. So I don't know where the glove is. I'm like, where's that glove? So that corner man has the WC glove.
No,
it's very valuable.
It's terrible.
Yeah, things like that happen. I even had one of the cleaning person on the MGM Grand Arena approached me and said, I picked up Frank Mir's gloves. It's a fight-worn gloves. He left it in the dressing room. Can you sell it? I'm like, how are you going to verify that? How are you going to authenticate that, right?
Wasn't that also a thing that happened? Didn't somebody steal the Korean Zombie's gloves in his retirement fight?
Well, I don't know about the retirement fights yet, but yes, I know some cases.
They had to he had to go through a bunch of loops, and they had to hunt him down to find who took those gloves.
Right. So the point is that the bigger the story you get, stop putting gloves on this public auction. It makes no sense to me. But again, in terms of Rizin, the fighter doesn't get the gloves, so that's all up to Rizin, right? I think.
Yes, I think the fighters don't care because the Rizin gets the gloves anyway.
Right, exactly. But again, I think that should also give to the fighters too,
Well, I do remember an instance where if you buy those gloves, Japan has like this strict rule where it's like you can't resell them. Is usually like the agreement. And I know I saw some cases where they were being resold, and I saw fighters like I think Saudi Oshima was getting pissed and tweeting about it or something. But
that's true. Many times I did the deal. I had to promise that you will not see this up on eBay and stuff like that. You know
exactly.
Yeah, we can't do that. But anyway, so let's talk about this actual fight. Horiguchi, it's not exactly looked pretty good, right? I mean,
he got a win, but that's about all you can say about it.
Yeah, and again, Flyweight Grand Prix now. I mean, he's one of the favorite to win if he enters, but hey, doesn't mean he's going to dominate, right?
No.
And especially if the Mokaev really comes in.
Yeah.
So I think this year's Flyweight Grand Prix is going to be very interesting.
It'd be very interesting because Flyweight and Featherweight are both stacked divisions now.
Very stacked division. And again, at the end, as expected, sort of my point of view, that Clever tapped him out,
Well, he didn't tap him out. It's a decision.
Oh, it's a decision. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's a decision.
No, but I mean, it was a very close fight. It all came down to the last round.
Mm-hmm.
And Koike won, which is mean, it's good for him. Kind of a boring result for Rizin.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, I don't think he really has the star power.
No.
So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Right. Now, I mean, not just because he's my client, I have to remind you that Ren has fought guy like Chihiro or even Saito, former champion, in his second, third, whatever MMA fights, right? I mean,
yeah.
And, although he lost, he did well, and now he's kind of climbing up on the ladder. So, I think Ren could try to, get to the title fight in Rizin, but again, the featherweight division is stacked.
Plus, I think Ren is so popular. Him winning the championship just adds like no value. I feel like Ren is Ren. He's outside of the rankings.
Yeah, almost. Exactly. But if he really wants to go to UFC, he's got to get the title. Or
no, go to UFC. That's true. But I'm just saying, popularity and power-wise, in Japan at least, I don't think it adds anything. It will if he wants to go to the UFC, though.
Yeah, but here's what I think. I don't know. I have to talk to Ren about this. He should still fight a couple more times, but he should really consider 135.
Yeah.
I really think so. He's not that tall. No. I mean, Naoki's taller.
He doesn't look too skinny when he fights.
Exactly. And he will have a better advantage, I think, in 135.
It'll be interesting to see how his power would go down, too.
Right. And in 145 wrestlers and, those grapplers, they're physically pretty strong.
Right.
Like Shadraff. So, looking at it. So, in my selfish, perfect world, Naoki could fight 2 more times and go to UFC and vacate the title, then Ren could come in. In my convenient, selfish world, I think that's what's perfect. But who knows, right?
Right.
Yeah. Now, I guess we've got to talk about the big matchup they announced, which is the Ren versus Miku coming up.
When we first talk about the name was not received well by
the fans.
I don't think people they called it the match 2.
Right.
Which Tenshin took issue with, and Tenshin was kind of complaining about it on Twitter.
Right.
And I think a lot of people were wondering why this was being called the match 2. I mean, I know why it's called the match 2. It's clearly trying to market it as a big fight.
Oh yeah, and it's the match 2 because it's the second Tokyo Dome fight in Rizin history, right?
I think the match had such a strong K1 versus Rise undertones to it that I'm interested to see if they rebrand it or if they keep it. It'd be interesting.
Yeah. And they'll probably pull up for all the first round fights of Flyweight Grand Prix there.
I have a question for you, actually. I know a lot of people were asking me, is this going to overtake, will this be like the equivalent of the Super Rising event this year? Or do you think there'll be a separate Super Rising event?
You mean on the summertime?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I have to ask.
Because it would almost be too close to each other.
Too close to each other's, and what matchmaker are you going to do, right? You're going to have to.
It's not going to be bigger than this. It's not going to be bigger than this.
And again, they have to build a fighter's popularity. So the other divisions, other fighters are not well built yet for Tokyo Dome or 40,000 stadium version Saitama Arena, right? So
you'd be a fool if you didn't put everyone you wanted to be a big star on this card. I'd put Sakuraba's son on this card. Mm-hmm. Anybody that you want to get exposure, put them on this, because this fight's going to get the most views of the year. It's going to be huge. I think this fight is going to be absolutely huge. It's going to sell out the Tokyo Dome.
Well, I think so too. It's going to sell Tokyo Dome, and because of multiple directors both have to go through, so they can probably promote this fight very well, right? Everything we discussed, be excited, 2 months.
Having been to an event where Miku and Ren were both on the card, and seeing that the entire arena was filled with only Miku and Ren fans.
I bet, yeah.
I have no doubt that this thing will sell out. Their fans are both ravenous. They're hardcore, and this is going to sell out almost immediately.
I think so too. And
what do you think about Ren's comments about he doesn't want famous people ringside just because they're famous? No porn stars as ring girls. No YouTubers for singing the national anthem.
You know what? I think I told you this before, but do you remember the very first time Ren made a noise against Miku as they put Miku's photos into the sandbag and punched it and up, right? And back then he used to show me all the videos or something before he posted. And I told him, listen, I'll be honest with you. I'm much older generation than he is. And I don't know. I don't understand why this is good or bad, or I don't know. So do whatever you want to do. So since then, he's off the hook in terms of like me approving anything. So he just do whatever he wants. And I'm telling this right now on the record. Only once, just because he did all this stuff, only once I told him, "Oh, this is not good, so let's erase." Only once. So other than that, I've never stopped him on doing or posting anything. I just let him do whatever he wants. You know.
It is funny though to see the guy covered in tattoos being like, "I don't want any porn girls in the ring. Makes my family uncomfortable." And then all those girls went after him. Did you see that? All those girls were like fighting with him on Twitter. So if anything, he's very good at creating attention.
Yes, and even like those pop-up stores he does, I don't know, it's hundreds of people lines up for those stores, and sometimes he even does like a little open training session for people who buys his product. So he hit pads for a couple of minutes. You know, it's a good business move, right?
Right. Well, plus I couldn't tell the comment because I know Rising has had AV girls be the ring girls before for special fights, and they have had like YouTubers sing, but I know that in Breaking Down, I think all of their ring girls are AV girls.
Yeah, almost.
So I couldn't tell if this was like a stab at Rising or if he was like directly mocking Breaking Down and what Miku does in his own promotion.
Or the girls who has experience with starring porn, right?
Right.
Adult video.
Which is like every other girl on Breaking Down. Which is so I couldn't tell if he was making fun of Miku or if he was making fun of Rising or both. But it was interesting. It generated a lot of attention.
I mean, first of all, we all know he has some beef with the Breaking Down CEO Mizoguchi. Anyway, that's very public. So he doesn't like him. So I think.
Plus, I mean, the whole steroid allegation things. I mean, there was evidence. I won't say how strong it was. There's evidence that Breaking Down people may have been involved. So he clearly has no love there.
Yeah, I wish I could talk about this publicly. I can't. But yes, I mean. So I think there's a beef going on. So that and whatever he does, it just creates more promotion for these fights, right? I mean,
absolutely. There's articles on Yahoo News about it. So
right. I mean, anything he tweets or anything he posts on Instagram, it became a news on Yahoo Japan. So
yeah, he's killing it. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah, he knows what he's doing, and But again, after this fight, he should be gearing towards if he wants to be a UFC champion or we can make it to UFC,
Yeah.
He's got to. So let's talk about this one. Kai Asakura's UFC debut.
Did not go well.
Well, what do you thought about that, really?
When I was talking to my wife before the fight, it's always hard to compare because when you compare rising fighters and UFC fighters, they don't normally have a lot of similar opponents that you can compare them with.
Yeah, you can't. Right? And it's a different class too. No.
Yeah, but I mean, when I think of the UFC as compared to the rising, I always think of the wrestling. And we've never really seen Kai tested grappling or wrestling wise. And I thought this matchup was a nightmare for him. And that's what
Right. Now, I heard that when he took this fight, his condition was if he wins the title, he relinquish it immediately and go to bantamweight.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
I know that he did make some comments that because this fight got delayed, his weight cut kind of got messed up. But I don't think that really had a big factor on how the fight went out.
So, because it was delayed by a couple of months, it's not that big a deal. He can always go back and regroup.
Yeah, I know he after the fight, he had nose surgery to fix his nose, and he said he's going to go back to flyweight.
Yes,
and he's looking to become a champion again within 2 years. But to be honest, I would put more stock in Raid Sudaya or Tada going up that high. I mean, who knows? Kai's a very hard worker. He could surprise us. He's got great KO power, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, this is what I think. The way Pantoja finished, palm to palm rear naked choke, which is his like famous move, it's almost like identical to how he finished Uruka Sasaki. Right. That happened right in front of me on the cage. I was on the cage right there in front of me. So anyway, here's what it is. Do you remember when Pantoja took a back on Asakura and he still kind of smiled, look at the monitor, try to appear that it's not a big deal?
Oh, I hate it. I hate it when fighters do that. But yeah,
I know. When you fight top grappler like him, if you're in his setup, that's it. You're going to get tapped out. So he has to go back fundamentally, I think, to understand the grappling and BJJ, right? And that's something it's going to take more than years of experience and training. And I mean, you're not going to be Kane Pantoja level in a couple of years. It's just not going to happen. And another thing like bothered me, right? Of course, his way of winning the fight is striking, right? Of course, that's his strong department. But why did he insist so much on that knee shots? Because he nailed well against Archuleta, but those knee shots are one of the least possibility to land.
I think he kind of bought into his own hype.
Yeah.
Even the UFC and their promotion into the fight was like talking about how deadly his knees were.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of a strange thing because I always considered his punching power to be his more dangerous weapon.
Right.
And the knee just clearly sets you up to be taken down.
Exactly. Right.
So I think he kind of got a little too into the knees, especially after the Archuleta win.
And the fact that what was his plan B, plan C if the knee didn't work? And that's what I didn't see on this fight. So, and like I told you earlier, the fact that he's a 135 champion went out to 125 and couldn't do much and got basically dominated. So, if I were Sean or Mick, I would tell the management of a guy like Naoki, like myself, like if I try to negotiate, I'm like, wow, he's 135 champ, but look at what happened to the other champ, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
I mean, if I'm Kai, I think I'm going to take like the classic Eddie Bravo advice, which is I'm going to hire a world-class jiu-jitsu instructor and then spend the next couple of years avoiding all grappling exchanges as hard as I can while I try to get my grappling to catch up to where it should be.
Yeah, exactly. How to not get into that setup.
Exactly. Like I want my grappling coach to look at me and say, you are a striker. You knock people out. I'm going to teach you how to not lose on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. And I think not only that, I think he needs the head coach that kind of totally sees the whole thing. And yeah, I mean, he has those two coaches, but I'm not sure what their game plans were. So, but that's a negative side of what happened. The positive side is the fact that he made a lot of money. And
made a lot of money.
Chris Standard, right?
Created a lot of attention.
Yes.
And a lot of, because before him and Taira, it was almost like MMA fighters in Japan had forgotten about the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
And now that he's over there, now that Ray's over there, now that Taira's over there, Japanese fighters see the UFC as a possibility. This is a place we can go. And then they see how much he's getting paid. They see the videos of how awesome it is to fight over there. Because, I mean, Kai, in an interview with Gong, was saying how much better the UFC treats the fighters. Like with the PI Institute, they have the health people. They have people that help you with the weight cuts. So it's just clearly almost like marketing for the UFC, seeing this guy at the top talk about how great it is to be there.
Yeah, I mean, the support system there is, of course, not comparison to the other promotions.
He essentially said they had a person following him around, like helping him with his weight cut at when he was
there. They do assign the nutritionists and all the people
Yeah.
for the helping weight cut. They even prepare all the meals, monitor their weights every day, provide them with the recovery food, drinks, everything. Yeah, it's all been done, Yeah, but here's what it is. And he said that now he says he's going to stick with flyweight and fight, right? But this is my biggest concern. He's a ranked fighter in flyweight.
What, 14th, right?
And that means they're going to match him against ranked fighter or somebody close to ranking. Now, if he goes to bantamweight, he will be non-ranked fighter, and he could start from the scratch on the bottom of the barrel.
That's what I was telling my wife, because she was talking about who are they going to have Kai fight next. And my thought was, if they're paying him that much money, they're not going to give him an easy fight. They're going to give him, he's got to earn that money.
And every opponent who's going to accept the fight against Kai will say, well, what if I beat Kai? Can I get his pay? Right? Yeah. That's what's going to happen. I know that's not going to happen because none of them have that kind of followers, like a star power like Kai has. And I'm pretty sure the numbers he created on UNext and stuff is probably super high, right?
Very high.
Yeah.
Probably created more attention for a UFC event than the UFC's had in 10 years.
Oh, I think so too. I think that single-handedly that he scored probably better numbers than past UFC shows.
Absolutely. And I will say, I mean, I'm going to give some credit to Kai. He's an incredibly mentally tough guy. And each time he's lost, he has come back better.
Yeah.
So it will be, when you lose this one-sidedly, it'll be interesting to see how much he improves and what he changes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But this is my concern. Look at all these 13 guys on top of the ranking. Oh, I'm telling you, all these guys are very well all-around fighters. And I'm telling you, in terms of grappling or those department, they are far better than Asakura.
Well, that's the thing is, the UFC just has. If I was going to, whenever I've said it before, their fighters wrestling and grappling is just so different than other promotions.
Oh yeah, I know. So I mean, I hope he'll win again, but there's also a possibility that he might not even win and end up getting released. And let's see what he had to say about how the UFC treats fighters, right? I mean, that's
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we'll see, but let's hope he does well. And because of this, let's talk about this. That it was documented that Hunter Campbell invited Miku to watch Power Slap and tried to make the Power Slap happen in Japan. And I'll tell you this right now: the Hunter actually did call me maybe 5 months ago. And he really wanted to put a Japanese female into Power Slap. So I mean, I did approach some of them, and including some famous female pro wrestlers, but every single one of them said no. They just didn't want to do it because they think they're just going through it to get a concussion.
I mean, sounds like that's smart. The only Japanese person I know was into it was that old pro wrestler. He's probably way too old to be doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and recently, I think it was announced on upcoming Breaking Down show, he is putting up some of the Power Slap.
Yeah, Miku, I think, did announce that he's going to be doing some sort of Power Slap show on his next show or something.
Right, so maybe he's hoping to send those Power Slap competitor to Power Slap in Vegas.
Well, if you want to find people that are willing to compete in Power Slap, I think Miku is the guy to ask because he's able to find people for his Breaking Down show. People that will do anything for attention. So
exactly.
I think
that's the right way to go. I think I didn't want to approach any of the people in Breaking Down. So the only people I approached was pro wrestlers. I thought it was only sense, and some of them MMA fighters. But again, I never really pushed because every single one of them told me like, oh, so I'm gonna go get there and get concussion, and how much money am I gonna make?
It's almost insulting to ask an MMA fighter to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
It essentially means like, so what you're saying is my career is over and I should grab as much money as I can before I can't fight anymore.
Right. So that's sad, right? But again, in terms of promoting a Power Slap in America or Power Slap bringing a Japanese competitor, I think teaming up with Breaking Down makes only sense.
Well, it makes so much. If Hunter is looking to expand into Japan, Miku is 100% the way to go.
Yes, especially for something like that, right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, what the heck? So, I mean, we'll see. But again, this is not going to be big thing, right? I mean, in terms
we're talking about the guy where somebody smashed a guy's face in with a chair during an audition on his show. So, like, these guys don't care about their personal well-being. Yeah.
Right. So, let's talk about maybe one championship Japan show that they have announced.
Let's do that. Yes.
Now, I heard a rumor that to prepare for this show, that Chatori will be actually living in Japan for the next couple of months. I don't know if that's true or not, but
as much respect as I have for Izan One, I feel like everything he does in Japan is kind of a fumble.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, especially with like the K1 CEO like showing up to like confront him, I feel like if they do this, he should not be involved.
Okay, that's true. It was like he did show, right?
Yeah.
So, but they're announcing fights, like Aoki is fighting and all kinds of stuff, right? So
yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you think this will be a big show in Japan that will sell well, or?
It's the big. I haven't seen the announcements. Is Aoki the biggest one they've announced?
No, I think Takeru Hirata.
I think it'll do okay. I don't think it'll sell anything out, but it'll do okay.
I did hear the rumor that Docomo was very interested in sponsoring the entire show. if Takeru Rotan is happening.
Well, that'd be big for them. I think the
That'd be
last
big
one I
for
went
them,
to, I
but
think
I don't see any announcements yet.
the
So
last time Takeru fight wasn't Rakuten the big sponsor.
or something like that, right? And remember Takeru made a big announcement through Abema that he's be making what after some $100,000 every fight,
Yeah.
fighting one, and I don't know what happened after that, right? I mean,
one championship's hard to gauge because when I went to the show last time Takeru was in Japan, there were a lot of people there, but you kind of get the suspicion that possibly a lot of those are comped people with free tickets.
A lot of comp tickets, yes.
Kind of has an interesting vibe to it.
Right.
But I mean, I feel like Takeru's drawing power ever since he joined with one has kind of decreased.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think somebody commented that the Haibo Rotan Takeru has died. I kind of agree. I don't know if died, but it's already way less than it was like a year.
Takeru's star power in general to me seems like a drop. No one really talks about him anymore. Aoki can draw hardcore fans, but he's not going to draw common people.
No, he's not the general.
And I mean, who else do they have? Like Akimoto and Ayaka Miura. So I mean, Itsuki Hirata maybe, but it'll be like I think they'll sell. Did they announce where it's going to be?
I think it's going to be Ariake Arena, no?
Again, last time they did it was at Ariake Arena.
No, I think it was Ryogoku, no? Was it?
Well, I mean, the last Takeru fight was at Ariake.
Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah.
The last Takeru fight was at Ariake. So, I mean, I think they'll do okay. I don't think it'll be like crazy sold out, but I think they'll sell some. They'll move some tickets.
But
it won't be anything like a
Rising.
I said
that, like earlier, like you said, there's so much kickboxing involved.
Wait, they're saying it's the Saitama Super Arena.
Is it? Okay, hold on. I gotta check it.
That feels ambitious.
Okay. Well, but they can always adjust the seats and close down the.
Yeah, they'll probably go for they'll adjust the settings, but
yeah.
Takeru at one point in time was a very big fighter, but yeah, I just have to agree with my initial statement. I think it's dropping off.
Yeah, and you know what? One championship has so much kickboxing fights, like you said, and they really need to revise MMA fighters' contract. I mean, they have a contract like 6 fights over 28 months kind of stuff, and you know, when you count the number of fights, the number of shows, and do the math, he's just never going to be on with that, you know?
Well, it just doesn't make sense to me. It's like, outside of that, why do you have Chihiro Sawada fight Mo Bang last weekend on a fight night card when you're doing a show in Japan? Put it on the Japan card. Like, why wouldn't they be saving the Japanese fighters for this? It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
There's one Japanese employee who works for one. She was hired in Tokyo, and she was the only one who got picked up to move to Singapore. And she's really trying hard to make Japanese fighters active.
I know who she is. She's incredibly nice. She's very good at her job.
She, you know, I think we all know who she is. And the point is, you know how like one always had the reputations that they sit fighters on the deck and not make them active and stuff like that. So I think she's single-handedly trying to break that trend, you know? Yeah.
Well,
so
especially, I think they're also trying to respond to some criticism they received from some fighters, but I just don't think Takeru alone is enough.
No, not
anymore.
Especially if you lost attention too. If you won that fight, it would be a different thing too, right? You know?
Right.
Yeah. And the fact that,
to be honest,
yeah,
kickboxing isn't as popular as it was in Japan. I think K1's struggling. They're bleeding fighters. I mean, their female champion is married to Ito, but Miyu, Sugiura, whatever. She left to do boxing. And I think Rise isn't what it used to be. I think kickboxing, as Rising's got more popular, I think kickboxing's got less popular, especially when Tenshin left. So I just don't think the fan base is there for it.
Right. So, I mean, let's see what kind of other fight card they can come up with, because they're announcing the other Japanese fighters' fights before this event. So, more, you know, those are not going to be available, right? And
who do you think they should put on this card? Like, I mean, clearly they should put as many Japanese fighters as they can, but I mean, do you put Akiyama on the card or something? I mean, he doesn't really move tickets, though. Everyone hates it.
I forgot about that. Is he still active?
Whenever he wants to be, I guess.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, I guess the fighter like that is convenient for one. It's not like he's always willing to be active, right? So, yeah.
Just give him big fights when he wants a quick payday. But yeah, I think it'll do all right. but who knows? I mean, the way that one treats Japan is always strange to me because last year, I think, didn't Chatri announce that they were going to do like 5 or 6 shows in Japan? Then they ended up doing essentially 1. So
Yeah,
they treat the Japanese market strangely.
It's a trend of one championship to make ambitious announcements.
Right.
So I think their approach is if you're going to do like 1,000, if you approach 100, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Which is okay. I get that. There's a lot of businessmen like that, right?
I'm the opposite. I'd rather under promise and over deliver.
But I guess that's their style. So, but hopefully they'll do well, and hopefully maybe they'll generate something more interesting. Because in terms of like a kickboxing, I honestly feel maybe karate combat is kind of coming up. They have some good budget and. They're always interesting Japanese fighters too, so
that would be interesting if they signed some like karate people for this. Maybe some people to compete in the Olympics. That'd be exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. Something like that make noise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, right, so I have a question before we leave. With the Rizin going to Korea, who do you think they're going to put on that card? I noticed they're going to a venue that Black Combat uses.
Right.
I think it's called Paradise City.
You know what's so funny? I'll tell you this right now. Mohegan-san also made a new casino over there. It's called Inspire. And when you go into their websites, there's an arena. And there's an explanation of the arena. From the day one, they were saying that they want to get MMA shows into this arena. And I know they have approached many. And they approached Rizin too, but it didn't work, right? So they ended up going to the Black Combat route, which is probably from Mr. Saeki and Deep.
Absolutely. If you don't think that Deep is the one like negotiating this Korea thing, you're crazy.
Yeah, they are, obviously. And Saeki is in China right now for the show.
Right. Because they just did like a Deep versus China card.
And so I guess from a Japanese point of view, they've done a successful show together with the Black Combat. So it kind of makes sense to go that route instead of a brand new casino they have never done anything with. Right?
If they collaborate and they do some Black Combat style promotion and shenanigans for this card, I am very excited. And I think as far as fighters, I want to see on it, instead of Siwoo Park, if you're going to put a Korean female on it, I think Yuri Shim has proven to be way more popular.
Probably.
I would love to see her on the card. Saudi Oshima has generated a bunch of Korean fans from fighting from Black Combat all those times. But I think Sakakibara also mentioned Ohara because he fights in Black Combat all the time now.
Sure, exactly.
But you got to put a big fight on the card, though.
Yeah, but also I think Rizin need to bring some of their stars too to establish the brand. So
absolutely, that's why I said you need a big.
3-4 Korean fighters and many top guns from their roster, right?
It's so close to Japan too that it's not going to be hard for the Japanese fighters to go over.
Sure,
and you need a big fight, and I'm very curious to see what they do. I'm excited for this card. It'll be interesting.
So again, like Rizin slowly but surely expanding to the outside Japan too, right? Like Azerbaijan show, Korea show. Going to the territory that UFC is not. I mean, Korea UFC is very popular, but they were trying to reach to the market the UFC is not haven't reached yet.
Well, the Korea is such a great opportunity because for some reason, they've never been able to create like a really big promotion. Like Road FC is not what it used to be.
No,
and Black Combat's making big strides. It's still a very young promotion,
right?
And so if Rizin is able to use Black Combat like they use Deep and Pancrase and Shuto, this is a great opportunity for them. Right.
So I think I thought it was very exciting that finally that Korea show got confirmed because I knew they were talking, the possibility for a while. So,
this to me is bigger than the Azerbaijan show.
Oh, I think so too.
Because the Azerbaijan show was like 2 Rizin fighters on a card filled with 20 fighters from like Azerbaijan and Georgia.
Even one title fight there, right? I mean, yeah. And Seri Park, I know she wants to go to UFC, but I know Miku is not interested. So she should just go fight. She should just. I know a lot of fighters thinks they can make it, and they blame on management. They're like, "Oh, this management is no good, so I'm gonna sign this management." I know it's like a lot of fighters does that, and they always get same answers.
Yeah.
So, let's go back and be active and stack up a W, right? That'd be much better, smarter, move. So hopefully Seri Pack will do that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And
All right, so I
before we
guess
leave, I do want to mention one thing.
Okay,
In that Pancrase announced their March show,
I saw that.
and I'm very excited to see Miki Motono fighting Imi Fujino
Yeah.
and Shizuka Sugiyama, who has completely reinvigorated her career at fighting Fumika Watanabe. And plus they're bringing in some good international talent for the card.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that in Japan, usually after the New Year's Eve show, like January, February, are pretty empty. So I think the next big fight coming up is this Pancrase card. So everyone should keep an eye out for it.
I think in terms of a girls division, I think there's a little bit of a war going on between Deep versus Shuto / Pancrase.
Well, what I've noticed is I think Deep and Pancrase seem to be trading fighters and working very well together in that regard.
Not really.
Oh, really? Okay, interesting. I will notice.
I'll tell you this on the record: the AACC is not doing well deep. That's why all the fighters.
Well, so they're all in Shuto. Yeah, I know that's very obvious when you look at the matchmaking. It's like, oh, interesting.
Yeah, Pancrase too, obvious, right? I mean,
well, I know that Honoka Shigeta. The rumors are that her next fight, former Pancrase champion, is going to be in Deep Jewels in March. So it'll be interesting to see what all happens.
Yeah,
a lot of action going on.
I think it's terms of contract. I don't think they put into exclusivity that you can't leave my promotion. They don't do that anymore. I think fighters got smarter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, always one fight deal.
Well, it's not necessarily in contracts, but I have heard instances of certain promotions being, if you fight for this other promotion, we'll never let you fight for us again.
Exactly. We'll never use you, kind of stuff. But
I've heard about that, but
it's not about that anymore, especially for female when there's not enough fighters out there.
Especially with some of the divisions, you gotta beggars can't be choosers.
Right. But in terms of Motono, if she wants another shot at the road to UFC this year, she has to fight. She can't be inactive. But
and Sayaki's made comments that he isn't able to get her strawweight opponents in the past, and he wanted her to drop to atom weight. And if she wants to go to the UFC, she's doing the right thing. She's got to take fights at the strawweight, and she's got to stay active. Pancrase has historically been a great way to get into the UFC. Right. So get a couple wins here, and maybe she can apply for Road to UFC again.
Well, actually, the Road to UFC selection has started.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I got the email from the people like last year, but I asked Sean, and he said he'll start selecting on January. So I'm pretty sure he's doing that. And I don't know exactly when it's going to start, but let's say if you're going to start like April, like every year, then if you fight in March, you're not going to be able to get that. So
I don't even know if they would have brought her back.
I wonder about that,
Well, either way, I'm just happy to see someone who said they want to fight in the UFC being active. I am not a supporter of the sit on the sidelines and do nothing.
Exactly.
The UFC calls one day.
Here's the problem about this. Some fighters who fought in Road to UFC has this mentality. It's okay, I'm only going to fight for UFC. That kind of stuff. But here's what it is. Road to UFC is not UFC.
No, if you look at the records, it does not count as the UFC.
Exactly. So then they get this mind like, well, I don't want to fight for a small Japanese promotion because that was a good experience. So maybe I'll wait for next year, maybe I'll get it.
Someone needs to sit them down and be like, the UFC saw you fight and rejected you.
Exactly.
You failed your audition.
That means you need to get back into activity and stack up a W so you can prepare to apply for next year.
You need to change their mind.
I think those moves are too slow in terms of some Japanese fighters.
If I was someone like Miki Motono, I would honestly be telling Pancrase, I want to fight as much as I can against all the strawweights you have. Or
I would have even talked to Rizin. I mean, they would be open to book her for one fight kind of stuff,
If I was her, I'll tell you what, I said this about my Izawa plan. If I was her, I would call Rizin and be like, what do I have to do to fight Murata?
Yeah, or something like that, right? Or get me in there, so they might bring in some foreign fighter, or even, like to match her, or whatever that is.
Murata's been surprisingly not busy. The only thing I've seen her in was she was like in that Ganjuma grappling match.
I don't know what she's doing. I mean,
yeah.
The moment she got released from the UFC, what she should have done is go to the Rizin office and talk to them.
Bring a big omiyage and say, I'm back in Japan. What are you guys up to?
Remember, in the first 5 years of career, whatever it is, Rizin booked her as their salary girl. They paid her salary, paid for apartment, build her up, kind of stuff, and paid for her travel to US to fight for Invicta. They did a lot of stuff for her, right? Send her to training in US, right? So then what? She leaves and go to UFC. Didn't do well. Come back. Then she really should go to the Rizin offense and talk to them.
Because it wouldn't feel like that big of a step back, actually. Because as many people have said, I mean, outside of Bellator gone, Rizin's probably the number 2 promotion in the world right now.
Exactly, but I know a lot of Japanese fighters. Once you experience the UFC, they feel like even going back to Rizin or anywhere is a huge step down. But
you got to swallow that pride. Got to move on.
You have to swallow it because you got fired. You got pink slip, and you got to go get another job, right? I mean,
I'm just happy. I mean, Miki Matono, I'm saying, like, going back to her, like, she went to UFC, it didn't go well. Now she's going to fight in Pancrase, where they actually have some strawweights. Beat all those girls, get in Rising, go back over to Happy Elephant, do whatever it takes. Just stay busy.
That's
get your name out there.
Right. So then for Miki, I hope this doesn't start to June, right? Or something like that. Otherwise, if he's going to start in April, she's not going to be in it.
Well, she can't do the Ren Nakai route, which is fight once a year and then wait for the UFC to call.
I heard that Ren Nakai is still telling Kana Watanabe is running away from her, all kinds of stuff. And
meanwhile, Kana Watanabe is making like thousands of dollars fighting for PFL.
Way more than she does. And
just like,
why can't Rin Nakai and her husband doesn't understand the fact if he wants to fight Kana, go contact PFL? Like, why do you even like yell, make noises? And
PFL would clearly be interested in that matchup.
I mean, again, she's getting older, not getting younger.
No.
I mean, she's gonna hit 40 soon. Then when you look back at her career, I think it's obvious to say that who sort of destroyed her career, right? I shouldn't say that destroyed. It's not past tense yet, but who will be destroying her career?
I mean, how often, in your experience, has the UFC signed 37-year-old fighters?
Well, unless if you're like a Pereira or Fedor kind of talent, right? I mean, like that kind of talent we're talking about. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's too bad. I blocked from Alex and everything. I don't know what's going on.
We could do a whole episode on just your opinions on what you should do if you want to go to the UFC someday.
For Rin Nakai?
No. Just a fighter in general.
If it's Rin Nakai, we would have to go back, get a time machine. We'll go back 15 years before.
I would have to pull out my little pointer stick and have a whole presentation.
Exactly, right. So we can talk about that on another episode,
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right, so we talked about hour and a half today. So
long episode.
Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you for listening, everybody. And have a nice day since it's Sunday here. Yeah. All right. I see you later, Charlie. Thank you.